We have not only students here, but we've got faculty and staff joining us for chapel. Students, let's give them a round of applause for being with us this morning. I'm praying, Lord, help me to resist temptation. Then this video plays talking about cheeseburgers, coffee, and donuts. Can I enter into the cheeseburger eating contest? Nah, I done had one too many cheeseburgers. I'll stick with the coffee. But listen, it is Suicide Prevention Week, and so we have some special chapels planned for you this week. We've got some awesome opportunities that are happening around campus that are posted up, so make sure you're checking your announcements and things like that because it's going to be a good week to get involved in what's happening. So before we get started, we're not going to start with worship like we normally do. We're going to have a special composition that you're going to listen to. Now, I know in worship we're usually singing to God, but in this composition, I think that you will hear God speak to you. So, before we get into that, I'm going to call Nathan up. Nathan, why don't you join me here? Get up for Nathan Sawyer. Now, welcome. Now, this is his composition, and I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about how this came to be.
Thank you, Pastor G. For those of you who don't know me, when I first came to Roberts, I'm a transfer. I was dealing with depression and suicidal thoughts. And I just lost a lot of my friends, really hard family stuff going on. Girlfriend just broke up with me, and so really at one of my lowest points. And so there was this one friend here on campus, and he was like one of my only friends. And whenever he would see me, and whenever we would like part ways from hanging out, he'd always look at me and say, "Hey man, you are worth more than you could ever possibly imagine." And the first time I heard that, I was like, okay. Because when you're depressed, you have these lies that constantly tell you that your existence is pointless, that you have no purpose on this earth, that everything that you're going through, the turmoil, it's not going to end, and so there's no point. But every day he'd see me, probably like 3 times a day, so I'd hear this 6 times. Every day, just, "Dude, you're worth more than you could ever possibly imagine." Just over and over again, and eventually those words etched away at the darkness, and something that I wasn't able to do that he could see me through the eyes of God instead of me who was seeing me through my eyes and through everyone else's eyes. And so during this piece, I want you guys to remember that through God's eyes, you are beautifully and wonderfully made, each and every one of you, and that you are all worth more than you could ever possibly imagine. Thank you.
While they're taking their place, let me pray for you this morning. Father God, we thank you because you sent your son, and in your son, he represented your heart. Jesus Christ revealed your heart for us. And so, Holy Spirit, I ask, Spirit of truth, that you would etch that truth deep in our hearts, that we are worth more than we could possibly ever imagine. Ask that our ears would be open, our eyes would be open, and that truth would ring louder than all the lies that were ever spoken to us. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen.
Maybe the reason that I got to live 15 years ago was the culmination of this moment right here. God, please save me. I don't want to die. I made a mistake.
You had a very significant spine injury, but you were completely intact neurologically.
Kevin Hines went to the bridge, jumped over the guardrail, plummeted 200 feet, but survived.
When we were in high school, he had that first major breakdown.
Junior year, and it was like a switch flipped. And then you started acting out publicly.
I didn't see hope. I didn't see a future.
We had this conversation in the hallway, and you said, hey, I found out what's wrong with me. I'm bipolar.
I really have been fighting for the last 18 years with this disease. Mania, depression, psychosis, hallucinations, all that's still there. I just know how to cope with it, and I know how to beat it.
When you see a lot of mental illness, that's a clue that the culture is sick, and that's got to change.
So that hope is there. I know I have to keep going, I have to keep moving forward. You were the first person to ever say, you know, Kevin, you should talk about this, to make an impact on people's lives.
There is more that we all can give.
I've heard people say, well, hope is not an action plan. Well, it's a start. Talked to 10,000 Marines in 2 days. If you see someone in pain, please say something. It is about all of us coming together, utilizing the power of our voices. You're going to get the help you need.
We've got a story to tell. Get the voices out there.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you very much. Thank you. We're all helping. We're all one part of a big team. We just need to realize it.
Yeah.
You know?
I want to say thank you. You saved my life.
He is 1 in a million.
You've been my inspiration.
Today there are days I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. I just know it's there.
You've done good with your second chance.
All right, so this morning we have a very special, I can't call her a guest, because on this campus, she is a legend. And I'm not just saying that, but she really is. Her name is Dr. Joyce Wagner. She's the former director of the Counseling Center. She now has her own private practice, but she is well known for her work around the city and by many churches. And I've had the privilege of sitting in on some of her wisdom. And let me tell you, she is the truth. And so you have the honor and the privilege to hear from her this morning. And please give her your undivided attention, because you don't want to miss what she has to say. So please, let's welcome Dr. Joyce Wagner.
Good morning. I wondered if you would do me a favor. If you would and you're able, please stand if your life has been affected by suicide. Now, this could be directly. This could be someone that you know and love in your life has committed suicide. It could be that you've been affected in the community, someone from your church, someone from your high school. Or it could be that you yourself have struggled with suicidal ideation, maybe attempting suicide. I want to spend 1 minute, and I want us to remember the people that aren't here with us today. So just stand for 1 minute. Okay, thanks. You can sit down. before we begin, I'm not a theologian, but scriptures like the one that is behind me, they bring me a lot of comfort, and they show me what I believe to be God's thought about suicide. So unfortunately, I know a lot about suicide. I have been a counselor as long as you guys have been alive. So I gained a lot of head knowledge. I went to Roberts for my MSW. I gained a lot of head knowledge, and I went to a lot of seminars, and I learned a lot about suicide. I'm not going to talk about any of that today because I think there's so much available on the internet. There's so many resources that are there. Instead, I want to focus the time that we have, I want to focus on the heart knowledge that I've gained by sitting with people for 2 decades, people that were contemplating murdering themselves. And I want to talk to you about the lessons that I've learned from being with them. One of them, probably one of the most important lessons that I've learned from talking to people that were really contemplating suicide is that it's a process. It starts with a problem that you have in your life, and you think it's unsolvable. And so what happens is your brain, for weeks, days, hours, whatever it is, thinks and it thinks and it thinks, what could I do to solve this problem in my life? And eventually, when there isn't an answer, what happens is your brain starts to think, well, if I just ended my life, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have this problem anymore. So one thought kind of comes into your head, and it's quiet, it's a whisper. If I just wasn't here, the problem would go away. And that one thought becomes several thoughts. And then the thoughts get louder, and then what happens is they kind of congeal together in a plan. And if you leave the plan unchecked, you get more and more details about what would I do if I was really going to commit suicide. And then if you do leave it unchecked for too long, the plan becomes action. So, as it says up on the screen, most people who try to commit suicide don't really want to kill themselves. What it is they want to find an answer to the problem that they have that they're trying to solve. So suicide becomes a permanent solution to a temporary problem. So you may or may not know this, and I think that the film is going to talk about this, but they do a lot of studies on people that have attempted suicide and survived. One of them, there's a book about people that have tried to commit suicide by jumping off of the Golden Gate Bridge or the Brooklyn Bridge, and I think that this man on the film is actually the author, one of the authors of that book. What they know is that immediately after letting go of the bridge, 98% of the people regret it. And they know that it was a mistake. And so that just goes to show they're just looking for a way to end the pain that they're in. So I've also learned valuable lessons by sitting in funerals of clients that have committed suicide. It's a lonely place to be as a counselor when you sit at a funeral for someone who's committed suicide. And so one of the valuable things that I've learned, like the people that stood, is the pain of being left behind and the pain of never having closure for those types of situations. And then I've also learned a lot from my own struggle. So if you ask the people that are around me if they thought that I was ever suicidal, none of them would say yes. But for as long as I can remember, I've struggled with depression and then some intense periods of being suicidal. So I'm not going to go into all the details, but there are 3 situations, episodes that stand out in my mind. The first one was I was in my 20s. I had just graduated from Roberts undergrad, had my first apartment, had my first real job, and I sat in my apartment and I thought, what do you do now? And I was lonely. I graduated, I hadn't really established a social support network yet, and so I had too much time on my hands. Too much time on my hands, too much time to think, too much time to feel. And I remember the first time that I indulged the lie, "You're all alone." And like I said, it was a whisper. And then the whisper grew louder, and it grew into, nobody loves you. And so, again, I've got a lot of time to think and a lot of time to ponder, and that becomes, nobody would miss you if you were gone. So, sat with that for a while. Several years went by, luckily, but then in my late 30s, I went through a period of time where, if you'll pardon the pun, I was dead tired. I was burned out. I was emotionally exhausted, mainly because I was trying to be perfect. In that state, it wasn't too hard to believe, if you just go to sleep and never wake up, that would be the easiest thing to do. And then once more in my mid-40s, maybe it was a midlife crisis, getting to that age, I had a period of time where I felt my life had not turned out at all the way that I had expected or wanted it to. And from there, the truth was twisted into the lie, your life is a failure, which became you're a complete failure, which turned into, why don't you just do one thing right and end it? Very cheerful, very cheerful. But the good news is that I'm still here, and I also want to say that each one of those episodes was shorter and less severe than the last because I spent less time believing the lies that were being told and more time looking for and finding the truth that I had momentarily forgotten. So I'm going to walk you through now some best practices to tell the warning signs if someone is suicidal, how to help yourself if you struggle with suicidal ideation, and then how to help somebody else. There's many, many statistics about suicide. I'm just going to give you one. It is the second leading cause of death among college students. It moved up from number 3 to number 2 in 2017. So people are going to tell you, I'm sure that they've told you, they're the best years of your life. And in many ways, I think that that's true of my college years. So what people don't say is college is also a time of tremendous change and evolution, and your early adult years are extremely stressful for a lot of reasons. So overall, I view college as a very tenuous time when you need a lot of support. So here are the warning signs to look for if you or someone you care about, you think that they may be thinking of killing themselves. Emotionally, what happens is people get irritable. So they may be sad, they may be angry, they may be guilty, they may be rebellious, they may be belligerent. What I want you to remember is people that are suicidal are irritable, and there's a change in their personality. And I think the film is going to get to that too. So a quiet person will suddenly start taking risks. A risky person will suddenly withdraw. Look for a change in their personality and look to see if the person is just irritable. Behaviorally, people have difficulty eating, may have difficulty sleeping. They often withdraw and isolate themselves. There's a loss of interest in things that they were formerly interested in. They may start taking risks, and there's often an increase in substance abuse. Huge connection between substance use and suicide. Relationally, what happens, and I think that Nate talked about this in his song, what you want to look for is exactly what Nate said. Has there been a recent loss in the person's life? Maybe it's been the breakup with a girlfriend, could be the death of someone, a recent loss. Does the person or do you have one or more problem relationships with a lot of drama, a lot of conflict? And then what happens, and again, Nate got to this in his song, which was really wonderful, it leaves you feeling very vulnerable, very exposed. And then finally, what happens cognitively with someone's thoughts is the way you can tell if someone's suicidal is they only think and they only talk about the problems in their life. So what's happened is, remember, their brain is trying to come up with a solution to this problem, this big problem that they have in their life. So their thinking has become narrow and constricted. and they're only thinking about that problem. And what happens is you get into a helpless and hopeless cycle. Helpless to do anything about the problem, hopeless that it'll ever get better. So if you are with someone, or if you yourself are super irritable, uncomfortable in your own skin, and if your thinking has become narrow in its focus only around problems, and you feeling hopeless and helpless, those are the things that I would be concerned about. So, how do you help yourself if you're feeling suicidal? The only thing you have to do if you're feeling suicidal is reach out. Now, that's the last thing you want to do. What you want to do is you want to isolate and you want to withdraw. So this is a story. It shows me in a tremendously mature light. But two friends of mine, I was going through a really dark time, and they stopped by, and they knew that I was going through a dark time. I don't think that they knew that I was suicidal or anything. Nobody really knows that about me, and it's not their fault. I wear a mask, and nobody can tell. So these two friends, they stop by, they knock on my door, and I said, without opening the door, I said, "Go away." And so they said, "We have Ben and Jerry's." And I said, "Go away. Leave the Ben and Jerry's." Again, very mature. So all you have to do is do what I did not do in that situation. So take off the mask, open the door, let people help you. Get support from your family and friends and resources that are all around you. Let other people help you. That's all you have to do, and they'll do all the heavy lifting. Now, further down the line, if you want to, you can gain some skills around problem solving so that you don't find yourself in that situation again. But for the time being, just reach out, take a hand that's willing to help you. Now, how to help a friend. If you feel like someone you care about is thinking about killing themselves, the most important thing that you can do is listen. Tons of studies around people that have been suicidal, and they say, the only thing that mattered, the only thing that I wanted, was I just wanted someone to sit and listen to me. So people contemplating suicide constantly say that's the most important thing that you can do, is just sit with them and be a friend. You don't have to do much. If you're sitting with somebody and you're worried that you're fearing that they're getting more and more suicidal, here are some tips. Only focus on the current issue. Don't bring up the future. Don't bring up the past. Just worry about what's on the person's plate right now. And if you can, try to widen out their thought process. Get them thinking about something besides the problem. You can try to help your friend view the situation realistically. Remember, their judgment over time has become impaired or may have become impaired. So try to get them to view it realistically, that things will get better. Help your friend search for coping devices and supports that they might have forgotten that they have. When you get focused on problems, you don't spend much time thinking about solutions or what you already have at your fingertips. And then reconnect your friend to people around them that are going to be non-judgmental and caring. And also listen. If these tips don't work and you grow increasingly more concerned about your friends, this is what I'd like you to do. I want you to look your friend in the eye and see if you see a spark of life there. If their eyes are dull and you don't see anything in there, I'd be pretty concerned. So then I want you to ask hard questions. And no, these aren't going to make your friend commit suicide. What I want you to do is I want you to ask your friend, are you thinking of killing yourself? If they say yes, and suicidal people are pretty honest for the most part. So if they say yes, ask them if they have a plan. And if they have a plan, I want you to ask them what the details of the plan are. The further down the road they are, the closer to the edge of the cliff they are, the more concerned you should be. When I sit with somebody who's truly suicidal, what happens, and I really pay attention to them, is I get a pit in the bottom of my stomach. People that are suicidal seem dead calm emotionally. They seem deadpan in their expressions. They're dead serious in their demeanor, and they're dead set on changing the situation that they're in one way or another. So if you see and hear and experience those things, you want to reach out and get help. The whole week on campus is devoted to suicide awareness and prevention. I believe Wednesday's chapel you're going to hear about several resources that there are, and there's many activities that are planned. Resources on this campus they're multitude. You've got RAs, you've got RDs, you've got the chaplain, you've got the counseling center, you've got the security office. You've also got professors and you've got staff people that care. All you have to do is reach out to them. In the Rochester area, there's also many, many resources. You can dial 211 in Rochester, and you'll be connected to a suicide hotline. There's other suicide hotlines, and there's other resources. You just have to reach out for a friend and get them connected to the right kind of resources that'll help them. Please don't feel like you have to do it alone. So, told you about my struggle with suicide. What I left out is how God showed up in each one of those moments. So in my 20s, remember, the lie was, you are alone. So one night when the depression was pretty intense, my pastor at the time just happened to call me. So I do not remember this, but I probably shared a bit about what was going on. And I remember her saying, much like Nate's friend said to him, I remember her saying, I love you and you matter to me. And then, this is the woman that she is, she's like, and I'm making you go to counseling. So I'm making you go to counseling 3 times. She said that. I will tell you, counseling changed my life. It also, that time and counseling reminded me that God is the God of all comfort. So then in my 30s, remember the lie was, life is too hard. So one afternoon, I was standing in my kitchen, and I was literally thinking about the ways that I could kill myself. And this same pastor called me. We had not spoken in probably 15 years because she had moved to the other side of the country. But she called me from South America, and she's like, Joyce, I know something is dreadfully wrong. So I don't remember much more of what happened then. What I remember thinking is, oh my goodness, if God would talk to somebody on a different continent about me like that, then I guess I have to truly believe, that he'll never leave me or forsake me. And it flipped the switch in my head. And then in my 40s, remember the lie was, your life is a failure. So this time, I was sitting in a church meeting, and my pastor was doing like the church meeting, and all of a sudden, he just looked over at me, and he said, Joyce, I think you're more successful than a college president. Now, it was an odd thing for him to say, and I think that a lot of times people don't even recognize what it is that they're saying. But for me, it was just a tremendous God moment. And it cemented for me that God hears the cry of our hearts. John 10:10 is an important Bible verse. It begins by saying, the thief, the robber, the enemy approaches with malicious intent, looking to steal, to kill, and to destroy. Your generation is so talented. I sincerely, truly love talking with you, hearing about how your minds think and learning about your hopes and your dreams. However, I've talked with a bunch of you over the last 20 years, enough to know that you struggle with a great deal, more than other generations in some ways. So for just a few minutes, what I want you to do is I want you to break into groups of 2 or 3, and I want you to pray either aloud or silently. Specifically, what I want you to pray for, or pray against actually, is any malicious intent of the enemy. Any lies that the enemy may have whispered that are becoming truth. Any ways the truth may have been stolen in your life, and against any plans that the enemy may have to kill or destroy. So break into groups, and I just want you to do that. It'll be 2 or 3 minutes. All right, you guys can start wrapping up, if you will. Thank you very much for doing that. So, if you would like to spend a bit more time talking or praying with someone, I've asked a dozen of my friends. They're either ordained pastors or they're trained counselors. I've asked them to come and be here today. So if you'd like to stay behind, I'm going to ask them now if they would stand up. Some of them are going to come here. Some of them are going to come kind of to the middle. And then also, there's going to be a pair in room 212 and 219 in case you want a bit more privacy. But I'm going to ask them to come. And if you'd like more prayer in a minute, just come and talk with one of them, come and talk with me, and we'd be happy to do that with you. Okay? They're also most of them are wearing yellow. That's suicide prevention, and so you can tell who they are. They're also the ones that are standing. So, and they're older than you. So, John 10:10, for real. So John 10:10 begins by saying that the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But as you know, Jesus always has the last words. The gospel goes on to say the hopeful words on the screen, that Jesus came to give life with joy and abundance. So as we end today, I just want to speak those words over you. I pray that joy and abundance would be your companions as you move through this school year. Now go, quietly if you would, go in the peace and the knowledge that God has a wonderful plan for your life.